Welcome. I'm calling the August 2026 meeting of the Sacramento Zoning Board of Appeals to order. Our first order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, members of the board had an opportunity to review the minutes of our July meeting. Any comments, questions, or do I hear a motion to approve? I'll second that. All in favor? Aye. Okay, the minutes are approved and will be in the there were no old business items, so we'll go straight to new business. We have three applications today. The first one on the agenda is probably going to take the longest time to review and comment on. So I'm going to switch the order and take the other two first, which I believe will go quickly and not leave you here and talk.
I can have lunch.
Next time.
All right. Accordingly, I am going to hear application number 9 of 2026 of Erica Waymeyer pertaining to 151 Seascape Lane. It's a variance for a pyramid violation, structure height, and height above mean sea level. And this is virtually the same as an application that was before us about 2 years ago. And the gentleman who was going to make the presentation will explain why he's back.
Okay, first of all, I'd like to hand up the, first of all, let me introduce myself. Well, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
Members of the board, my name is Christopher Kim. I'm an attorney at Farrell Fritz. My office is located at 100 Nordic Parkway in Hopewell, New York. Farrell Fritz is the attorney for Erica Waymeyer. And also with me today is Roy Fontana from McDonough and Conway Architects, and Chuck Lohman from Land Use Ecological Services. First thing I want to do is hand out the affidavits of okay, booklets for you guys. Follow along as I tell the story of why I'm here today. So,
Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay.
You know, I keep these applications, and I had the one from the last time in my basement. And I decided it was going to take me too much time to find it, and realized that there's probably no point in keeping it.
All right, well, good. Yeah, you should save them. They're, you know, sometime in the future, they might be worth something.
They have them here in the basement.
So at the outset, I just want to thank the board for taking the time to hear our application again and consider our request for relief. I also want to let the board know that I did go by the site today and it's still posted. I drove by the property and I think somebody else was driving by the property when I pulled up behind you. I checked to see if it was being posted. So it was posted. As you may all recall, this property was the subject of a prior application for relief that was presented to the board at a public hearing on October 11th, 2024 by my partner, John Armentano. The public hearing was closed and the board granted the request of relief at its meeting on November 8th, 2024. For your purposes, I have attached the board's decision 8/2024 as Exhibit 9 in the packet, so it's at the end. But if you want to read along, you can see what was granted the last time. As shown on the location map included in the booklet as Exhibit 1 and the county tax map attached as Exhibit 2, the property is a 72,327 square foot vacant flag lot parcel at the end of Seascape Lane. As shown on the aerial map attached as Exhibit 3, the property is directly adjacent to residential properties to the north and the south and open farmland to the east. The adjacent parcel to the west is owned by the Peconic Land Trust, There are several other residential properties to the west and south of Seascape Lane and to the north on both sides of Seascape Lane. The roughly 1 acre adjacent property to the north, which is 149 Seascape Lane, is improved with a single family dwelling that is more than 100 feet from the applicant's proposed dwelling. To the south, 155 Seascape Lane is another existing dwelling that is approximately 350 feet from the proposed dwelling. Photographs of the subject property as well as the surrounding properties are submitted as exhibits 4 and 5, respectfully, as you can see. As was noted at the prior hearing, the applicant Erica Wehrmeyer continues her effort to obtain approval to construct the proposed single-family dwelling and other associated site improvements on the property. The property is located in the FEMA VE flood zone and is further restricted by the existence of a 20,790 square foot wetland preservation area as delineated in the survey of the property that was last revised on July 18th, 2026, and is attached as Exhibit 6. Submitted as Exhibit 7 is the Town Conservation Board wetland permit, which was renewed by the applicant on April 29th, 2026. The description of the permitted activity in the permit and the special conditions set forth in the renewed permit require the maintaining of a naturally vegetated wetland, non-disturbance and non-fertilization buffer area adjacent to the wetland preservation area. As a result of the permitted activity and special conditions granted by the Conservation Board, the total lot coverage of the proposed house and deck and gravel walkway remains unchanged from the prior application and is set at 1,369 square feet on the 72,000 square foot plus lot. Or just about, it's only about 2.9% of the property area. And the proposed dwelling would lie entirely within the VE flood zone in the northeastern corner of the property, with limited setback from the boundary with the farmland to the east. Pursuant to Chapter 88 of the Village Code, which incorporates FEMA flood zone guidelines into the code, residential structures in the VE flood zone shall have the bottom of the lowest horizontal structural member supporting the lowest elevated floor, elevated to or above base flood elevation, so as not to impede the flow of water. I'm sure you know that section of the code well. Due to the recent change in the applicable FEMA regulations since we were last before the board, requesting relief for approval to construct a single-family residence on the property, the base flood elevation for proposed dwellings has increased from 14 feet to 15.5 feet, 15 and a half feet. This change to the base flood elevation required revisions to the proposed floor plans. A copy of the latest elevations and floor plans prepared by Brown and Conroy, dated, if I was in the theater, I was getting very angry. The latest plans from McDonough and Conroy dated May 28th are submitted as Exhibit 8. In order to construct the proposed dwelling, in accordance with the wetland renewal permit and be compliant with the now required FEMA base flood elevation regulations, we submit the instant application requesting variance relief from the village's pyramid law and height limitations. The relief requested, as noted in the building department's turndown letter dated June 17, 2026, we are requesting variance relief to permit the pyramid violation variance of 8,450.69 cubic feet an overall structure height of 25.5 feet or 25.5 feet, where the maximum permitted is 25 feet. And the total height of 41 feet, where the maximum height permitted is 40 feet in the BE zone. As was the case with our last application in 2024, we submit that granting the requested relief will not cause an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood, nor will it create a detriment to the nearby properties. The property is distinct from other similar residential parcels in the village in that it is situated between open farmland, vacant land, wetlands, and other residential properties. Abutting the property to the north, 149 Seascape Lane, which was previously the subject of the ZBA application to permit a single-family dwelling with 3 stories, where a maximum of 2 stories is permitted. In addition, 138 Landscape Lane, which is 100 feet to the northwest of the subject property, is also granted similar relief to permit a 3-story dwelling. Given this precedent, we submit that the proposed dwelling will be similar in overall size and consistent in height when compared to other dwellings in the immediate area. Accordingly, the proposed dwelling will not cast an obtrusive figure over neighboring properties and is consistent with the established pattern of development permitted along Seascape Lane. Therefore, granting the requested relief will not adversely impact the character of the surrounding area. With respect to feasible alternatives, it should be noted that the delineated wetland preservation area, and the required non-disturbance buffer area leaves little room for development outside of the proposed location with limited setbacks from property boundaries. The applicant's intended benefit of constructing a new single-family dwelling on the property that is compliant with both the wetlands buffer and the FEMA base flood elevation guidelines can only be achieved with the requested relief. It should also be noted that the pyramid law variance relief requested is largely due to the placement of the proposed dwelling near the eastern and northern boundaries of the property to comply with the wetlands permit requirements. Therefore, there are no feasible alternatives available other than the granting of the relief we're requesting. Numerically, the requested variances are not substantial. In order to comply with the FEMA guideline and code regulations, we are seeking a variance of 1/2 foot, 6 inches, for the overall structure height, and 1 foot for the height above mean sea level, which are numerically de minimis. The proposed pyramid violation is not qualitatively substantial when considering the totality of the circumstances unique to the application, including the existing wetlands area and the non-disturbance buffer area, and the proposed location of the dwellings. The proposal would also have a positive impact on the environment, as the dwelling will be outside of the designated wetland and meet the required setbacks. And the required buffer in the house would be raised 1.5 feet to meet recently adopted FEMA floodplain mitigation regulations. In 2024, the Town Conservation Board wetlands permit was issued in connection with the proposed development of the property. The renewal wetlands permit is dated April 29th, 2026, and expires on May 24th, 2027. If you look at the attached Exhibit 7. The permitted activity and special conditions included in the wetlands permit restricts the location of the proposed dwelling and makes it difficult to strictly comply with the village code. Accordingly, we submit that the applicant's hardship is not self-created. To the extent the board finds otherwise, we note that based upon all other factors addressed by the applicant's best efforts in accordance with the village law, this factor alone is not dispositive, the factor that it's not self-created. Based upon the totality of the circumstances, unique to this application, we respectfully request that the board grant our application so that we may comply with the recently adopted amendment to the applicable FEMA regulations. At this time, I'm here, Chuck and Lori are here to answer any questions you may have.
Well, thanks for your very thorough de novo presentation of the application, which seems to be very similar to the prior application. If I'm not mistaken, you confirm that the sole change is dictated by the increase in the freeboard requirement from the state for wetlands, which causes the house to be more elevated than it was. Quick question. The change in the elevation required by the state is 1.5 feet, and yet the relief being sought is merely an additional 0.5 foot and 1 foot in one case. Was that the house was not at the limit before? Is that, or has there been a change in the structural nature of the house so that it doesn't go as high as it would?
There's been a slight change to the interior of the house that reduces the
Need for it to go to the full height required by the freeboard. Though not particularly material to the application, any reason why the permit wasn't pulled after the last variance was granted? It's taken this long to go.
Well, Erica and her husband Helgi, they live in Pennsylvania. They're, I don't want to say it because I'm sure they're watching, but they're advancing in years. We all are. I'm going to be 68, so I feel it myself. They were uncertain as to what they would want to do with the property once they got approval. And I'm sure, as you might know, they're looking to sell the property to the neighboring property owner. And I believe their attorney is online here on the Zoom. And he can tell you for himself, but I believe they would support the application.
So the proposed.
I'm sorry, just say that. I didn't quite understand. So they are selling it to a neighbor and pursuing the application simultaneously.
Yes, we're required to pursue the application as part of the
Part of the transaction, they want the approval.
Yeah.
But the proposed development is identical to the prior one, except for the increased elevation due to the increased freeboard requirement of the state, and not even the full amount because they reduced the interior size to some extent to compromise that. Has there been any communication or letters or anything from 149 Seascape, which I think is the only house that might be affected by the increased height?
Well,
Right behind it.
their attorney is on the Zoom.
Yeah.
He didn't submit anything in writing,
Okay.
but he said he would be here to support the application.
All right. Maybe we'll hear from him now. Who's that?
Carl Benincasa.
Oh, Carl. You on?
I don't know, he's on.
Who's not on?
Okay. All right, but you're comfortable representing to us that they have no objection to this?
I'm representing that to you because he did tell me that this morning that he would be on today. But we were scheduled to be the second one after your long first
okay.
one.
Understand.
So he might be knowledgeable. He might know that.
Well, if he gets on later and he wants to comment, we'll welcome the comment. But for the moment, I'm prepared to accept the representation that they're not in opposition and possibly even in support of this application. Anyone else? Yes, Richard?
I'm having difficulty finding the existing grade elevation
The elevation, they're at the corners of the property. You need where
where the house is going to be
if you
placed.
go to the survey, there's a corner elevation in that northeast corner. I believe it's 6.2 feet.
Okay, so
It's,
then I guess it goes down, okay.
Yes, that's 6.4.
All right, very good.
6.4 feet.
Yes, okay. Thank you.
All right, the location, the siting of the house is logical, if not only location that you could put a house with the wetlands and everything else, and you've got the open land on the other side. Anyone else have any questions?
No, I'm sorry, the siting of the house on this is identical to the siting of the prior application.
Yes, it is. If you look at in the decision that I've attached, I believe there's a survey
Okay.
attached to that decision.
And that siting is pretty much dictated by the wetlands and the preservation area. I think we've covered that.
So I have another one.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no, the survey, I take that back. The survey is attached to the wetlands permit. You look at the wetlands permit. It has the location of the house on it, and that's required by the special conditions contained in the wetlands permit itself.
Did the upland,
That's the last page, I believe, of the.
Yeah, yeah.
wetlands permit. Yes, it is. And that was dated October 13th, 2023. It was received by the Conservation Board. So you can see that the survey that was attached to the wetlands permit application and approval is the same
yeah,
layout as what we're proposing now.
what's the date on that, from the wetlands?
The wetlands permit, the renewal permit is dated April 29th, 2026.
Okay, and it hasn't changed the undisturbed area, it's not enlarged or anything? This is
No,
the
they
change.
issued the renewal permit, and they based it upon, the renewal permit is based upon the same survey that was submitted in the original application. We did update the survey for submission of the zoning board of appeals application. That new survey is dated July 18th, 2026.
Any comment, questions?
That survey is attached as exhibit 6, if you want to look at that. It's a
The only comment that I really have is, like I brought up last time, I thought the house could be shifted over another 5 feet, but besides that, it's 10 feet off the property line. That was my only question at the last time.
You're skipping, you're moving it 5 feet to the east, the southeast.
Up to the west.
To the west.
Southwest, yeah. That would alleviate the pyramid.
Unfortunately, the wetlands dictated that exact location.
First, identify yourself.
I'm sorry, Lori Fontana from McDonough and Conway Architects. The location of that building, that new two-story home, was completely dictated by wetlands. We had no choice, no option or anything. It took 12 years to get that. So again, we worked very hard to get something that was approved with the first variance. And then we got nailed with FEMA raising its grade, which created us, unfortunately, to have to come back in.
Okay.
If you read the permit itself, the conditions require the building to be located in that location.
And in fact, that property side lot, yard is adjacent to open space in the farming, so it's not really affecting any adjacent home. Okay,
Correct.
That's correct.
all right, any other comments, questions? Do you want anyone to make any further comments in support of the application, or I'll entertain a motion to close the hearing?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Motion, second, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, thanks very much for bearing the traffic to get here today. The application. Yes, it's been seconded and approved. Seconded by Henry. Okay. Okay, second application before us is application 10 of 2026. Corner house in Sagaponic at 791 Sag Main Street. And we have Britton Bistrian here to tell us why ceasing relief.
Good afternoon, Chairman Mizell and members of the board. I'm Britton Bistrian. My office is at 9 North Main Street in Schenectady. And I'm here presenting Gretchen Topping as Corner House and Sagaponic LLC, owners of 791 Sagaponic Main Street. I'm also joined by the project architect, Peter Cook. So although this is not the architectural review, he reviewed his expertise. Just a little background on the property. The parcel was improved prior to the adoption of zoning. Residence dates back to the turn of the century. It's a pretty landmark property in the village, as I'm sure we're all sort of aware of its corner location. It's kind of an anchor, sited on the corner of Sagaponic Main and Gibson Lane. This project request for variances today is to apply for front yard setback relief for an enlarged front porch on the main house. There's already a porch there. It's pretty small in proportion to the residence. They want to make it a little bit larger. There's no increase in habitable floor area. And the setback relief is from 80 feet front yard setback to 45.3. And the second variance request is for a front yard setback relief on the other street, Gibson, for a proposed garage 90 feet from where the setback is 90 feet, but it's proposed to be 30 feet. The hardship presented in the application is the pre-existing pre-zoning siting of the residence. The relationship to the front yard on Sagaponic Main Street is the same as the proposed deck extension, so we're not making it any more non-conforming, it's the same relationship that exists to the street. And the garage basement also relates to the pre-existing siting of the residence. Logically, a garage should be in the front yard and adjacent to the driveway. You don't want to put it in the backyard and have to drive through your yard. So it is both these variance requests are because of where the house was built in the 1900s.
I'm just gonna interrupt. I have the affidavit and everything.
So all in all, we think this is tastefully and sensitively designed additions of modest size in keeping with the residential and rural farmhouse character of Sagaponic. I don't believe there was any opposition to the project, and any comments submitted to the file, and I'm not certain if there's anybody here to speak. I was contacted by one neighbor who just asked for a clarification of where the garage door would be entered from, and then they were satisfied with my response.
I'm sorry, what's the answer to that question then?
So right off the existing driveway. If you look at the survey, it says existing driveway, you'll enter the garage.
So you're gonna have to transit the whole property to get to this garage?
No,
Coming in from Gibson Lane.
it's coming in from Gibson Lane. There's a driveway.
Is
straight to the-
there a curb cut there now?
Yes,
Because that's not indicated on the survey.
So I'm seeing.
it says gravel driveway right next to the proposed garage.
Oh, okay, sorry. But that doesn't lead to the proposed garage.
Right, because the
It
garage
leads
isn't there
to
yet.
Previous garage.
Okay.
But it's
And
empty.
So where is, what is access to, should be self-evident, what's access to the proposed garage?
It-
South to the west side.
The west side.
So they're gonna come in.
On the existing driveway, to take a little right.
Turn right into, existing driveway, turn right into, which is going east into the new.
Is that right? So there's gonna, the access would be through the existing driveway and then a new dog leg.
Correct.
Okay, that's well put, though. Because the gravel driveway that's shown on the survey is still to the prior garage, which is being converted to a pool house. So the question was appropriate, and I guess for the person who asked which way you're coming in, the doors to the proposed garage will be on the north,
West.
and it'll be a dog leg to the right when you come in from the existing driveway to enter it.
So that the doorway to the proposed garage will parallel Sag Main Street, is that correct?
Technically, it's outside Main Street.
Yeah, I always started with cemetery.
Yeah,
Cemetery Lane.
It's the map is wrong.
The street address is Sag
That's
Main
'cause
Street,
it's
so I
the
think that's
most-
what,
It's right
Yeah,
at
it's
the
right-
very, it's where that split takes place, they're right across from the flagpole.
It's facing towards Saginaw as opposed to just the entrance. All right. Now, the other driveway.
Well, I'm sorry, we didn't get an answer though, I'm unclear, exactly, the doors to the garage are on which side?
West side. They're on the west side.
No, west is this one. No.
Wait,
The-
let's
Let's let
instead of
them
doing
answer.
directions, when the doors to the garage face in the direction of
You can point it out on-
Or the direction of Gibson.
Petersburg architect, 688 on top of Watermouth. Yeah, the doors are on the Sagaponic Main Street side of the garage.
Okay, that was.
So they will dog leg over here. This is kind of a parking area for them now. So you're gonna turn this way. There's a faux barn door on Gibson Lane, but it's not the garage door. You could have brought architecturals, but I was just told I didn't need them.
You got it?
No, I got it, yes.
Well,
It's not in here, it's not drawn in here.
Exactly, it's not shown on the survey, but it's been clarified as to what is intended. And it's not part of the variance application which pertains to the porch. So we're not precluded from granting a variance for a porch because we don't have the driveway located on this particular survey. Is that a fair statement?
there's also a variance request for the construction of the garage.
Yeah.
Well, construction of the garage, okay, yeah, so then it should be shown on the survey as to how the access to the garage will be driveway, but, anybody feel that we need to have an?
Yeah,
updated survey?
I do, because if we approve this, I don't think it's clear what we're approving.
Well, we're approving a garage in that location.
A garage without
But-
doors of access.
So we'd be happy if you wanna give us, I don't wanna say a week at this time of the year, but maybe 2 weeks for, to make a revised survey that shows proposed driveway extension leading to the, west facade of the garage. Happy to do that.
Well, I think it would be a good idea for the survey to show the access to the new proposed garage, where the driveway and paved or gravel area will be in order to access the garage. So, yeah, why don't we then hold the hearing open solely for purposes, well, not solely, let's just say we hold the hearing open for the presentation of an updated survey, which identifies on it the proposed new configuration of the gravel driveway accessing the garage and where the entry would be. Okay?
Happy to do that.
Okay, thanks. Anybody else have any comments? So this is part of the compound, the topping compound that Tony was here in the last meeting for various topping properties?
No.
It's not, okay, so
This is adjacent to it.
it's adjacent to it, but it's not part of what would be a,
So did you submit the plans still? We don't have any plans of
We
the
did,
porch
we
extension.
could, because it was front yard setback relief, but we're happy to submit the plans for the garage, if you'd like those as well, they're complete.
And then you're gonna have drawings of the porches and all that.
Could submit them all if you would like.
That'd be nice. That way we can see what you're gonna build.
Okay.
so the elevation and the dimensions section should be complete.
Like we're going
Yeah.
in wide, you know?
Yeah, okay.
I mean, I imagine the AHRB approved it, but
Well, that was the next question, is this isn't the historic district, but was it not necessary to obtain AHRB comment? It's not really an approval, it's.
We need approval from this board to go to the AHRB, so
And you got
we are, no, we need this board to approve the variances.
If, as and when, yeah, that's been, I had that question as well, whether you get AHRB approval first or ZBA. The AHRB prefers that the ZBA opine that it will grant the variance before they make their recommendation with respect to the architectural design. As that's really, it's advisory, it's not required generally, and it's not a condition of the variance.
okay, then we definitely need the plans.
Yeah,
We will definitely submit them.
okay.
Thank you.
All right, thanks for the additional comments, and thank you. All right, so I will entertain a motion to continue until September, what's the date, September, the September meeting?
11.
September 11th. Meeting. Yes, move, second? All in favor? Okay. It would be helpful if those drawings, design, whatever you're producing is produced, say 10 days in advance of the next meeting, so we'll have an opportunity to review them.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Before that we get
It's not always the case, but it has, yeah, been in the past, and we can discuss that. Awesome. All right, let's get to the first application. Okay, so we are now. What did I do with my paper? Yeah. The agenda. Yeah, thanks. All right, this is the application of MKRP Holdings LLC. It's application number 8 of 2006 pertaining to 328 Town Line Road. Tony, you're on. That's fantastic for the
Anthony Pasca for the applicant. Thank you. I'm also here with Nilay Oza, who is in Oza Studios, he's the architect. He'll take you through the project a little bit after I speak a little bit, and then I'll back through the variances. And Melissa Dedvich, who's the project planner, is also here in case there are questions. I'm sure that this board has faced share of applications on Town Line Road. But I do want to sort of fit our project and our property within the context of Town Line Road, because it's important to understand the hardship part of it, what makes this property a little bit unique. And the main issue is that if you go up and down Town Line Road, all of the parcels are, well, I shouldn't say all, pretty much all of the parcels are deeper than our parcel. And most of the parcels are oriented in a way where they are more traditionally lengthwise. If you're running from Town Line west, they're sort of oriented lengthwise, where the narrower part of the lot is on Town Line Road, the deeper part of the lot goes back in a westerly direction. And if you've dealt with applications on the area of Town Line between Daniels and the ocean, every property, with the exception of the oceanfront lot, which is technically on Town Line but doesn't really look like it, but every other property is about 240 feet deep south of Daniels Lane on the west side of Town Line Road. As you go up north a little bit from there, between Hedges and Daniels, you have a little bit more of a mishmash of depths, but they're all fairly large. You have a couple of lots that are over 400 feet deep running from Town Line West, and you have three that are in the 300 to 400 range in that block. And then a little bit south of our property, you have a block of three parcels that are about 190 feet deep. Those are the narrower ones of lots other than ours. And then as you go north to the highway, you have another mishmash. We have agricultural lots, but they're varying depths from Town Line, all larger than ours with the exception of the barbecue, which I'm going to just put to the side. It's not a house, so we're not going to talk about that. They all vary in design. There are some ultra modern homes on Town Line. There are also historic homes like ours. It's not a, we're going to talk about that a little bit because it was part of what dictated the design of the addition has to do with the historic nature of the home. It was a big driving force behind the variances that we're asking for, and we will talk about that a little bit. There's a mishmash of properties that have full vegetation in the front yards where you can't even see the houses, to some that are more front facing where the homes are right up on the road. And so it's not a one single character of Town Line, but it is the one thing that I can say is that the lots are generally, with those two exceptions on the two ends, the ocean and the highway, all deeper than our lot. Right now, they're all in the R120. Back in 1957, when this area was first zoned by the town, they were placed into the Residence B district that required 25,000 square feet per lot. So back in 1957, our property, which is 2/3 of an acre, at 29,385, would have been a conforming lot back in 1957. The town upzoned it first, so once the village came in and essentially adopted the same zoning, it had already been placed into the R120 district, which requires 120,000 square feet a lot. So where do we fit in with this, and why am I even bothering to talk about it, is that our lot size is sort of fairly in the median of what you see on Town Line. There are lots that are 0.2 of an acre, many of them, 0.4 of an acre, some 0.5, ours is 0.675, and then you go up from there. We're somewhere in the middle in terms of actual lot size. But we are unique in that depth issue, and that's what's driving this
Tony,
application.
if I can interrupt you for a moment, the survey says that the subject parcel area is roughly 40,000 square feet. Oh, it's 39,999.
But
You said 20.
29,385.
Yeah.
What am I looking at here?
29 feet.
It's 29,385.
What is this? Coverage. Oh, coverage, the subject parcel area. 39,999. On the site plan. I'm misreading something here.
Do you have this in front of you? See, it says coverage calculations.
You have total lot area up to 2935 on the existing conditions map, but on the site plan. Coverage calculations, it says subject parcel area is 39.
See the area at the bottom of the survey?
The telling is 50% less of the.
It's right down here.
Yeah, I see
Which
that
area?
down at the bottom. I was looking
Here
at
it
the coverage
says-
calculation.
The subject parcel area is 39,999
Or less, or less. It's his formula. When the Rainer Group does their calculations, they base it on a certain formula,
So
so.
what we're really looking at is the area as certified by the, at the lower right-hand corner of the
Yeah,
survey.
29,385.
Thank you.
Got it.
And means a
I don't mind.
little shot of.
No, I don't mind. So where I was going was with the what makes our property unique and what's driving this application is the depth. It's 125 feet or so. And it is, with the exception of that oceanfront lot and the barbecue, the narrowest lot in terms of depth on the entirety of Town Line Road. And it's wide, it's wider, right? Wider than it is deep. And that's where the traditional zoning rules break down a little bit, because in traditional zoning rules, you have deeper front yards and deeper rear yards on the assumption that your lot's going to be deeper and you have narrower side yard requirements. So what I would appreciate you could show would be the site plan, which is on page 7. Perfect.
Yeah, the very
So-
narrow building envelope.
So what you see on this, what I think is interesting about this, you see the blue building envelope there? That's not a building envelope. It's a negative building envelope. And I'm not sure quite seeing anything that stark. I mean, we've seen some negative building envelopes where the front yard setback, which is going all the way to the rear of the yard,
Behind the rear.
is so far behind the rear yard setback that it actually looks almost like a normal building envelope, but that's actually the negative building envelope if you applied the R120 requirements of 80 feet front and 100 feet rear. For most substandard lots like this, there's an automatic relief valve in the code. So under 245-53E, the village in its wisdom has said that, you know, non-conforming lots not only get to pre-exist, but you get some automatic relief valve provided you're a single and separate lot. And the automatic relief is for us, the big deal would be the 0.3 of the lot depth is how you normally measure the rear lot line. And that would put us at about a 40-foot rear yard setback. We technically don't qualify for that. And it was one of these things where when you read the code, we first thought we should qualify for it. And John explained we don't, because our lot is different. It was created by variance. And that's what, it's not a single and separate lot to the extent that it goes all the way back to 1957 in separate ownership. What happened was that there were two houses on this bigger parcel that were merged into one lot. And in 1990, a variance was granted by the town of Southampton Zoning Board of Appeals to allow the division of this larger lot with two homes on it into two lots, as you would see our lot today, plus the flag lot that's immediately behind ours. So our property was benefited from a town variance that approved the area at 29,385, approved the house setbacks at 23,3 for the front and 76,2 for the rear, because that's the exact existing setback. And it also approved setbacks for the garage at 13.2 feet off the front yard line and 28.79 feet off the side yard. Plus the town also approved by variance the coverage, whatever the existing coverage was on, and said you can keep it. And at that point, the planning board approved the set off, and the lot became a legal lot in the eyes of the town by variance, not by single and separate status. And then when the village was formed, the village recognized it as a legal lot, but not by virtue of being single and separate, just by virtue of it being a legal lot. So that's the main hardship that's driving our application is this application of R120 standards to a lot that just it can't work on a lot like this, and the fact that we just narrowly fall between the cracks of the automatic relief that you normally get either from the single and separate status or sometimes from the cluster approval as a separate grandfathering that applies to cluster subdivisions, which this was not a cluster subdivision. So that's the main hardship. Another hardship that Neely is going to address a little bit is the fact that the house is a historic house. It's not historic in the official sense of the word. It's not designated as a landmark, but our clients who bought it knowing full well that the village would want that house preserved. And so that has dictated design decisions that have to be made for any kind of addition. And so it's being treated as if it were a historically designated house for purposes of how we've designed the addition that the clients are looking for. So with that, I'm going to ask Neely to walk you through the design, and then I'll come back and we'll talk about the variances.
Fine, before you do that, so I assume you have submitted the affidavits of posting.
We did.
I have them both.
And we don't have a single and separate report, since it's not.
that.
It is, I don't think it was in my paper.
We did submit it. We had submitted it, it was after the initial submission, but we were asked to submit that. And what it shows is it wasn't single and separate until the subdivision variance that happened, and then it's been single and separate since then.
All right, well, you explained that anyway, but I didn't see the paper.
But it's the village has it. We did submit it to. So okay for Neely to walk you through the. Yes, thanks.
Everybody gets present.
Neely Boza, the architect for the applicant, Boza Studio Company, 2408 Montauk Highway, Bridgehampton.
By the way, before you begin, this house was raised to build a basement below it a few years ago, wasn't it? Right, okay, perfect.
So it's just to kind of continue with Tony's point about the historic nature of the property. The existing residence in the property, although not formally listed as a contributing structure, was identified by the village as possessing the character that the village code is written to protect. And the village recommended that before pursuing a variance relief with the ZBA, we first present our design to the ARB as a discussion item. We did this in April, and I'll end briefly on their comments at the end of my presentation. So based on this sort of assessment, in working on the design, we kept two sets of guidelines in mind. First is the village's own AHRB guidelines, and quote, they say, new additions, exterior alterations, or related new construction shall not destroy historic materials, features, and any spatial relationship that characterize the property. The new work shall be differentiated from the old and shall be compatible with the historic materials, features, size, scale, proportion, and massing to protect the integrity of the property and its environment. So this is the village's guidelines. The second guideline we work with is sort of more federal, the Secretary of Interior Standards for the treatment of historic properties for rehabilitation, which is what we're doing with this existing structure. And that is defined as, quote, the act or process of making possible a compatible use for a property through repair, alterations, and additions while preserving those portions or features which convey its historical, cultural, or architectural values. So those are our two guidelines. So what follows is an abbreviated explanation of how our design attempts to do this. So please bear with me. I'm going to highlight a few specific sheets to do this, and it can be brief, and then we can go through any sheets that you want to. So Abby, if you don't mind, could I
Should
start?
sign in this.
No, in the existing application. I'll come to that in the next one. Yes,
That's what
exactly.
The new one,
The new one.
the new one,
Yeah.
this one.
So, page 18, no, this is page 18 of the existing application, not the new one. Page 18 of the
Oh, wait.
existing.
Oh.
Yeah, page 18 from there. This is a bird's eye view. Yeah. So you can follow along here. It's very quick. There are three sheets here. This is a bird's eye view. The 1,800 square foot house on this site as it stands today. So this is the existing. Yeah, that's the right page you're on. Yep, Mr. Chairman. Yep. Downline Road runs diagonally left to right across the sort of bottom of the page to the top right. This slide shows the street-facing volume that our proposal commits to retaining. Next page, please, Abby. The new single-story addition sits to the rear, differentiated from the old, but in relationship with it via an interior courtyard, with the roof that is deliberately subordinate in height and presence, but rises and falls in harmony with the roof profile of the existing house. We also wanted to be clear and flag additions we are proposing to the form of the existing house itself. These we will discuss later when we're reviewing renderings. And they're intended to make the existing structure compatible with its use as part of a fairly modest single-family residence in today's Sagaponack. So the next slide just kind of cleans it up, and it shows the existing and proposed as a complete whole. So now I'll go to the new package, if you don't mind. So this slide shows the surrounding houses and the open fields adjoining the site, kind of what Tony brought up in his presentation. Page 2, if you don't mind. This landscape plan prepared by THLA shows our approach to landscaping and site planning, which will also be visible in the upcoming renderings. The triangular view cones indicated are vantage points that show the renderings that are forthcoming. We will start with the existing and proposed street side view. So that's the bottom cone that will be standing on Downline Road, looking back at the structure. And then we'll proceed clockwise till we end at the northern elevation. So the next slide. So this is a view from Downline Road. It's the existing house. The next slide, please. So this is the view from Downline Road of our proposed design. The porches added here use an initiative codified by the village in 2024 that encourages street-facing porches like this one. That's really the only change to this view. Just so you know, yeah.
But the north-south dimension, the distance on the existing facade versus the new facade, is that the same?
Well, if you notice in the prior explanation, the southeast corner of this structure, if you go to the prior slide, it just kind of completes that corner.
Okay, but if you, assuming that corner is completed, is this on the existing?
Yes.
Is the dimensional, is the
Yes.
distance the same?
Yes.
Okay, so but this doesn't show you the structure in the back.
Well, that's my point. The proposed addition is in this view, but it is hidden entirely behind the existing structure from this vantage point. In some sense, that's the point.
But that doesn't look to be right if you look on the hypothetical survey, because it extends further north, it doesn't, it extends a little bit further south. And then
Yeah,
extends
and
further
to
north.
the point, a little bit further is the issue. It is as a three-dimensional structure hidden behind the corners of this home. I'm not saying that anywhere on Town Line Road you wouldn't see it. I'm just saying from this vantage point, you don't happen to see it.
You're referring to these.
Correct, exactly.
Yeah, they just happen to be in this view not visible. That's my point. They will be visible on Town Line Road. That's not our claim here. So next page, please.
But the answer to my first question is, assuming you filled in that cutout in the southeast, this is the same distance north-south.
Yes.
The front structure is not.
The front facade, making that assumption, is the same as the existing front, the new design,
Yeah.
same as the existing front facade.
To qualify same, we are adding a porch.
You're, yes, but that's bringing it east.
Correct, yeah.
But I'm talking about north-south.
Yes, there is no change
Okay.
other than that corner, correct?
Okay.
So this is the south view. The existing house is to the right, and the proposed addition connected to it with a small connector is visible on the left. Again, the roof heights are the same, which is one reason it is appears to be hidden behind this structure. The next page, please. So we actually did the exact camera position to make sure we had the right context here, and it happens to land behind the 6-foot hedge to the west, which we found was the right way to show this because that would be from the adjoining property. This is the view of the west facade of the house. Next page, please. This is a view approaching the house from the parking to the north of the house, and this is the main entry. The addition is to the right-hand side, and the existing historic home is to the left-hand side. Again, it is
The entry is this where this connector is?
That's correct. And so the massing kind of harmonizes with the historic structure in terms of the roof heights and ridge heights.
Courtyard in between.
So finally, the ARB comments, these are all on public record and verifiable online. The general comments was they thought the design blended the old and new beautifully. They were open to the idea, and in specifically talking about the street-facing porch, their comment was, quote, "It makes the home a lot more inviting from the street, more compatible with Sagaponack as it exists today."
Can I comment on that last one?
Yeah.
The architecture review board approved the siding on the second structure in the back, which is stone.
They haven't approved the project.
Yeah, this was a discussion item. So the village asked us to go in front of them because our design is set up to work with the existing historic structure,
Yeah, which is wood.
which is wood. We would have to go back to the architectural review board for a formal approval from it after we get your approval.
So you raised this with respect to the last application, in terms of
Raised.
sequencing between AHRB and zoning.
Yes.
In some cases, the AHRB has requested that the ZBA first approve the variances before they delve into materials, textures, and surfaces. But there are cases where AHRB, because of the massing, we may not want to be granting a variance until AHRB has given advice. Now, one of the
True,
things,
but
there was the
they're
property.
misleading to us. You
No,
know?
no, well, I
Yeah.
get it, but that's an aesthetic,
Yeah.
it's a different issue. We did approve an historic preservation frontage on the property at the very south end of South Saguenay, at the south end of the cemetery, where you may recall they actually removed a couple of outbuildings and shortened a barn in order to build a more modern habitable front structure, and using the same logic as to National Historic Standards and a separation with the new structure being separated from the front. And as it's built, I was rather disappointed because it was more overwhelming than it appeared in the,
But that property is in registration of historic area. This property is not.
yeah, I understand.
Okay.
But my point being that the renderings sometimes don't do justice to what the
Misleading.
actual massing will be, which is relevant, but the material, the issue that what I think we would like clarification is the interrelationship between AHRB's action and our own.
Yeah, so, can I clarify that? Because
Yes,
we actually invited it. We wanted to get a sense from the ARB, because normally you do start with the zoning board and then go to the ARB. But we kind of wanted to get a sense of, are we even on the right track here? Because if there is no interest from the ARB standpoint in the way, the concept, more than the specifics, but if there's no interest in the concepts, the porch, the addition in the back, we might have gone back to the drawing board and asked for different kinds of variances. So we actually invited the informal meeting with them, and I think they graciously put us on their agenda for that purpose, but it wasn't meant to be, they made no final decisions. Like, as far as things like materials and the architectural details, there's no final decision that was made on that. So
identify some.
Melissa Dadovich, Peconic Environmental. My understanding is because when I first came and I met with John and Rhodey, is because it was considered historic, that's the only way you're allowed to go to a pre-discussion with the ARB. We just did something very similar with 31 Hedges. It was a pre-application before we went to planning and everything else to go through all that. So that's the only reason we're allowed to do that, is because of the historic nature of the house. That's my understanding. That's good.
Okay, so to Richard's point, what we are now considering is configuration, dimensions, setbacks, not necessarily the final materials, the surfaces of the structure, which will still be subject to further AHRB review. I think I had understood that there were already some changes that were made in response to some comments from the village. Is that right? Was it from the trustees or from the AHRB? The plan has been modified to some extent already, is it not?
There are some minor modifications that when we presented the ARB, candidly, there might have been some ridge height issues that our rendering was incorrect in showing, and so we've corrected that. So the ridge heights for the existing structure do not change.
But those were corrections, there weren't changes of the general
No.
plan based on comments.
No.
Okay. All right, yeah. Anybody else at this point?
Yeah, So, Todd's questions. We can get to the structure, but what is the reason for moving the existing driveway from the south to the north?
A couple of things. So we are sensitive to the fact that there is on 318, as you can see, a home to nominally the south side. So the setbacks for the accessory structure also allow us some more sort of gracious allowances to situate the pool there. So for those two reasons, the pool being towards the north, and the fact that there's a house adjoining us in 318, the northern location of the driveway made more sense.
So I went and looked at this property yesterday. I mean, I'm familiar with it, but I walked it through it or walked along the street with this again. A problem, and we can talk later about whether it's our problem, but a problem is on the north, there are already two over wide driveways. You're gonna add a third one. It's gonna look like the Long Island Expressway. On the north, when you go along the street, or when you come out of Wainscott, you're gonna see nothing but, black, tarmac, or gravel. And so you're gonna have probably 65 feet of driveway. And don't you think that that's a problem?
Well, to start, if we could put up the site plan, either even the survey is fine. So it is not a drawing. I'd say we actually have a fairly large vegetated buffer between the northern driveway and our proposed driveway. And the driveway is very short. It essentially terminates in a gate. So what you're seeing is a long driveway that runs through. Actually, our proposal, if you don't mind, Aggie. It should be, yeah, the next drawing is fine, yeah. As you can see, where the turn occurs, our driveway is there. So it's actually got a good 16 feet between the driveway that you were mentioning to the north and our
Oh, it's two driveways.
apron. Yeah, well, those are pre-existing. Our driveway is an
I
apron.
know, but we have to deal with, we always deal with the pre-existing,
Yeah.
right? So,
There's also a flag lot to the south, so it's not like there's nothing towards the south. There's a driveway accessing 318 towards the south as well.
yeah, but
So it's actually 25.
Oh, yeah,
It's actually 25-foot separation because that curve there that you see is a 25-foot radius.
Yeah.
So from the northern property line to the entry of the driveway itself is actually 25-foot radius. And to be fair, that the other side also has a driveway on it, and that for that, it just seemed to make more sense. There are no other houses to the north of us. We were separated from the nearest house by two driveways in what's currently vacant property. To the south is a house that's
what is,
relatively close.
do you know the status of this property, the property on the corner, the vacant, what you just called the vacant property?
Do I know the status of it?
Yeah, it's for sale.
I mean, I've seen the sign.
Yeah.
That's all I've seen the
So
sign.
it's,
That's about it.
so it's not under the custody of the Peconic Land Trust or anything like
No,
that,
it's-
okay, it's developed.
Maybe someday, who knows, but.
Kind of strange the arc is there. Did Joe Raymond do the original?
You talking about the curve?
Yeah,
I don't know the origin of that, except that was, there's an anecdote that the owner of this property helped facilitate that driveway that goes back somehow, but
Yes.
338.
yeah, the one that goes back and takes access off of here, I haven't researched it, and it's just an anecdote, but, that is what I heard. So. Do you have any other questions for Neil?
You did see the letter that we received from the.
Yeah, I'll talk about it.
Yeah, okay.
I'm sorry,
I
you
think
address
that's-
that?
I want to address the variances now,
Yeah.
and then we can address that. I'll address it briefly. So, I mean, I thought the best way to go through the variances was just to go one by one. There's 6 numbered variances, and I'll group a couple of them together, but we could generally go in order. The first one is the front yard parking variance. We already have a front yard parking variance that dates to the town approval. That was part of their approval. But as you pointed out, it's being flipped from the south side to the north side.
Where you don't get to move the variance, right?
No, so I'm asking for, I acknowledge, we're here because we're asking you for a variance. I'm not saying we're doing it as a right.
Okay.
But it is a pre-existing condition either way, whether it's existing versus proposed, we have front yard parking. And up and down Town Line Road, I would say probably a majority of the parcels have front yard parking. Certainly the narrow properties as you go further south, there's no side yard, so there is no other place to put them. But I did try to kind of go up and down, and I would say maybe it's 2/3 of the properties from Hedges down to the ocean are have front yard parking on that side, so it's not an uncommon thing. And the same exact hardship that we talked about, the depth of this property, it makes it impossible not to have front yard parking, because to avoid a variance, you'd have to get to 80 feet plus. We can't do it. It's impossible.
So you made the case for front yard parking, which is not inconsistent with the neighborhood. The question that was being raised before is why it's being moved from the south to the north. Now, the design of the proposed house has the entry to the house on the north end.
Right.
Into the courtyard between the old and new structure.
Correct.
So a logical place for a driveway would be approaching the entrance to the house, as opposed to the opposite end of the house.
It also,
Where we just granted a variance to another house on Town Line Road that similarly had front yard parking on the south end of the property, Paul, and we allowed them to move it to the north end.
Yeah, but that was for a very different purpose.
Well, it was to be able to access directly to the house as opposed to being at the far away from the entrance to the house. I'm not saying that that necessarily is exactly the same here, but I'm saying there is some precedence for moving front yard parking to a more convenient location. But your points about its proximity to the other driveways and another developable site are, I think, germane.
So if you also, this is a good drawing to have up because another design aspect of why we're switching it from one to the other, it's because we're getting rid of the garage too. And the garage, which is a very non-conforming building in terms of being right up on the street and it has its mass, it enables us to kind of create that block of side yard, which is nice. It's something that we want to do in zoning is to try to create some open areas where you don't have, buildings and.
Yeah, but I'm not sure that I agree with that because if you move if you leave the parking where it is, and obviously you would reshape that it looks like a driveway that goes to from one side of the property to the other, but you would reshape that. But you would have plenty of open space on the north if you didn't put the driveway there. So, really, I thought what you were gonna say about why you were moving the driveway is so you could get this little pergola or whatever you call it. And you didn't mention that, so I'm not sure yet.
No, we haven't talked about that.
Okay.
It's number
The architect.
5 or 6 on the list,
Okay.
so I haven't gotten there yet, but, and it's a, I'm gonna be honest, it's a small feature of this application is the pergola, it's not driving, I assure you, it's not driving.
No, it's.
It is not driving the design of this.
Yeah.
The pool is a big feature, and so when you look at this, the property widens at the north side.
Yeah.
And really, to try to squeeze a pool on the south side, if you were to reverse this, it doesn't work, it would have been a bigger rear yard variance that we'd be seeking.
Why are the pool and the parking lot connected? And if there were, you could leave the pool there, no problem, and park where you have parking now.
To us, it made more sense to design it this way. It's a design feature. It made more sense to, and we thought, I mean, in fairness to the other neighbor who has the driveway on the south side, we thought we were doing the right thing by putting the driveway on the north side away from the two residences, because there is a residence on the other side of the flag strip. There's another property as a residence that's pretty close. And so we thought it was the right thing to do to get the parking away from those owners where there is today nothing on the other side. I realize someday that there could be a house on the opposite side of the two driveways, but the neighbors who objected, who wrote that letter, their main objection is we don't want to drive by parking as we go down our nice sloping driveway.
I agree.
I mean,
I thought that
you
letter
know,
was a good letter, it was not good on this point.
It was, I mean, that was their argument was we don't want to drive by somebody's parking, but you could say the same about the person who lives behind who has to drive by it. It's the same idea. So we thought that was an appropriate place to put it. So that I don't have much more to say about the front yard parking, unless you have any questions about it. Okay. Porch is number 2 on the enumerated things. It's the front porch. You saw the rendering of the front porch. The front porch is a character thing. It's not it's not more than that. It's not going to create, some kind of activity. But the one thing I want to point out that Neil mentioned is that it is something that the village just a year ago, I think Neil said it was 24, I believe it was 25, when the village adopted the law that codified a policy that we want to encourage front porches because it adds a little bit of character and a little bit of depth. And it was local law number 1 of 2025 that added section 245 33B2B. And just want to say what the stated purpose of that law was. Under section 1 of that local law, it said accepting certain roofed porches from the code's gross floor area calculation would incentivize homeowners to include them in their architectural designs. Front yard porches, particularly those visible from the street, further the village's goal of promoting a rural and agricultural aesthetic. And there were similar comments when the trustees were considering it, that this is something the ARB was encouraging, and my assumption was people were saying, I can't put a front porch on because it eats away my gross floor area. And the ARB said to the trustees, make an exception so that people aren't faced with that choice.
I understand that point, but I think that is more toward the construction of new construction, where houses were boxy and devoid of more softening rural type appurtenances such as porches. This house is already here as prime example of a rural property, which is appropriate to the village, which of course did not have porches. So it's almost a little bit of a.
We think the before and after, it adds a little bit of character. The ARB seemed to like it. I mean, ultimately, it's going to be their choice, right? That's their.
I'm merely saying that the change in the law to encourage porches was not to retrofit existing historic structures that did not have porches, as much as to encourage new construction to try to blend into the rural environment. So putting a porch on a pre-existing historic rural property that did not have a porch is a bit of sort of a replica or faux rural.
Well, can I say something? There's no case to say that existing structures by definition are aesthetically completely unvarnished. I mean, they can be improved.
Yeah.
And so if one were to be improving the structure as if it were a quote unquote normal structure, that's a design move you would make to make it more appealing to the street face.
Okay. I'm not arguing whether the porch is or is not appropriate so much as commenting on Tony's justification for the porch on this property being encouraged by the village change of law, which was not directed to encourage porches on pre-existing homes so much as to encourage changes in designs and new structures. But we can pass it. It's theoretical.
You may be right, but the policy statement is still, we want to encourage porches. And so it's not a, look, this isn't a massive thing. It's a porch, right?
Like I said, I wasn't arguing the substance of whether the porch is warranted or not, so much as a justification which doesn't quite fit facts, as the same comment that was attributable to the driveway, where there are reasons why things may take. The most cogent reason that I saw for moving the parking to the north side wasn't because it improved the open space on the south, and it wasn't because it was fairer to the owner on the south, so much as it was more convenient for the design with the entry on the north. And so, the reasons for why things are done, one can pitch, but
sometimes there's more than one reason.
Yeah, there are. Okay,
it's like, look, I'll tell you this, like I get involved in projects earlier and try to help make sure that they're thoughtful and that when decisions are made like this, are they justifiable or not? So
I'm certainly not opposed to homeowners having parking areas that are more convenient for their use when they come home with groceries, not to have to carry them from one end of the property to the other to enter the house. Yeah, but for example, but to then say that it was fairer to the owner on the south is not necessarily persuasive under the circumstances.
Okay.
And we should, just to get back to the one point that keeps coming up. I'm not an architect, but I'm sure that our architect could move the entrance to this house to the south side as easily as it is on the north side.
Well, yeah, but the whole point is, there's two flag white driveways on the north and one on the south. The driveway entrance, to me, doesn't matter where it is. You could even ask permission from that guy to use his driveway.
Well, I think people should be doing that.
You wouldn't even have it from the street. You wouldn't even see it from the street.
Yeah,
You
unfortunately,
go and
that's,
ask
That
them.
doesn't happen, it should happen.
that's another area.
But it could happen.
Yes.
That's
You
another
could get
area.
an you could get an easement to use
It
that road.
could, if there's a little arm twisting from the village,
my
but that's hard to get.
And a little
It's
cooperation.
another area where the code is dysfunctional, which
My other
requires properties to have street frontage, which creates a slew of these flag lots where there are a series of driveways next to each other as opposed to a lane with takeoffs for the adjacent properties.
My other point is Tony referred to as removing the existing garage. They could leave the existing garage if they wanted to and have a garage there and have additional parking on the other side, because it's pre-existing, you know?
We could,
But
but
they-
we're not. I mean, we're not proposing.
They're asking just to take it all away, the garage away, which makes it more appealing from the street, and move the driveway to the other side. But he has the opportunity to leave both if they so desired. That would be my point, Henry.
We call that mitigation. I mean, that's part of the idea is to offer that up as,
Right.
you know, a mitigating factor that would justify these planning changes. Just to close the loop on the porch, dimensionally, we are squaring it off, just to make that clear. There's a couple of inches because the house isn't perfectly aligned with the street. So whereas the original pre-existing setback's 23.3 feet from the street, there is one corner of it that's gonna be at 22.9. So it's a few inches in the other direction, and the other side is a few inches in the other direction.
The other point is, up until now, when we received this, one impression I had of the porch is pushing further forward would have been flattening the easterly facade if it were enclosed, which was not appealing. Seeing this, where it's an open porch, and I gather it's intended to remain an open porch, it has screened or in any way enclosed, does not create that expansion of the frontage visually forward. So that.
And it's continuing the roof line too, which helps. It doesn't require a change to the roof line. I'm gonna, just based on the order that these were advertised in, I'm gonna skip 3 and do that at the end, because 3 and 6 are really tied together. Those are the two rear yard, the two rear yard issues, and I think they belong in the same conversation. So I'm gonna go to 4, which is the swimming pool being 83.7 feet from the street. It's a tiny piece of the swimming pool as it curves around that is technically within that 90-foot setback. I think under the circumstances, it's de minimis, and it's the same hardship that we have with everything. If we were in R40, that would be a conforming setback, because R40, which is more akin to this size of a lot, that would be a conforming setback, but we're in R120, and so it supposedly requires 90 feet from the street. We only have that one little section, we only have 83.7 feet from the street. So, and if you can see, if we flipped it to the other side, it would actually be slightly closer, and because of the way the lot lays out. So unless you have any questions about that, number 4, I'll move on to number 5, which is
require a side yard setback as well as the front yard or not?
the pool. No, I
Yeah.
don't believe it does.
No, only the front.
Just front yard.
It's just that quirky front yard piece
Got it.
that it wraps around. Number 5 is the pergola, and actually this drawing's an earlier drawing and it's incorrect in where it shows the pergola. I want to make that clear. If you pull up the survey shows the correct location. There was an original idea to have the pergola where it was shown on that landscape plan, but we wanted to make sure that the pergola was off of the side yard in a more reasonable way. It was just too close to the side yard where it was. And the pergola it's a place to sit. It's a place to have a little bit of shade, sit and enjoy that yard. As I said, it's not the driving feature of this project, but it's an amenity, and that's sort of the trade-off of getting rid of the garage, which the clients don't really need and causes more of an impact on the streetscape, to have a little bit of an open pergola in the back where they could sit does give them a benefit that they want. So that is the trade-off that we're asking for.
And the south end of the pergola is more northerly than the south end of the garage that's being removed.
Correct.
Yes. So I don't have a ton to say about the pergola other than I think it's a low impact type of use. It's not a building, it's not but it's we're offering that mitigation to getting rid of the garage. So unless you have any questions about that, I want to get into the rear yard because I think that's the big variance because at least numerically it's the big variance and it is what sort of we started off with, which is that negative building envelope. We have the team has designed an addition to the property based, as Neela pointed out, based around those historic guidelines. And so when you, as a board, think about what you have to do, which is, are there alternatives? Are there different kinds of ways to approach this? You might think, and I would think naturally, well, can you go up? Can you go this way without having to go back? And in a normal world, that might be an option. To put an addition going up is not an option for us on this property because of the historic. That would be the no-no, to mess around with this roof line from the street or to try to widen the house from the street. That would be sort of the foreboding thing from the AHRB standpoint. And so we were very careful to create an addition. Neela was very careful to create the addition that followed that guideline of making it subservient to the historic part of the house. And so that's what's driving the location of it behind the house. What I mentioned earlier about the automatic relief valve, and this I think is important to put the context on why this is not a substantial variance. It sounds, mathematically, it sounds substantial, right? Because of when you compare it to the R120 setbacks, it's a big number. But as I mentioned, we fell between the cracks of the automatic relief valve. If this lot was next to another lot that was the exact same size, exact same configuration, but existed by virtue of just being single and separate back to 57 instead of existing by variance, we wouldn't need a rear yard variance. It would be fully conforming to the automatic relief. And that was important to design it that way to make sure that the 0.3, that's the automatic relief valve you get under the code, gets you to about 39 to 40 feet, depending on where you are. The house is at 44, I believe, 44.2 feet from the rear yard. That's at the closest point. And so the entirety of that house would be in a conforming location were this entitled to the automatic relief of the single and separate version of the non-conforming lot provision. The same is true for the rear yard coverage, because rear yard coverage is based on the portion of your required rear yard that is subject to coverage. And in most cases, you're talking about accessory structures, right? You're talking about the area between the house and the rear lot line, how much of it's covered by pools, pergolas, pool houses, other buildings. And in our case, the only portion of the property that would be within that rear yard coverage, were it at 40 feet, would be the pool. And it's well under the 20% allowance.
I'm sorry, I can follow that. So you're saying that what do you call the new building? So we have a.
The addition is fine.
The addition, that's the one thing.
Yeah.
Okay. The addition is not part of that calculation?
No. It is for the R120 setback. So if you apply the rear yard setback under the R120 standard, which is 100 feet from the rear line, the entirety of the addition is within the rear yard.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Including a big part of the existing house is within the rear yard. So
Yeah.
that's why the number is at this 30.
It's almost double.
It's almost double,
Yeah.
right? And that's what's creating that hardship. What I'm saying is that if you applied the automatic relief standard. And I'm using that because it's an objective
If you
measure. I mean,
qualify
it's
for
something that
it,
the,
because of a technicality,
Yeah,
yes, but if
exactly.
you did qualify.
if you applied that, we would be conforming to coverage, to the rear yard coverage and to the rear yard setback. So it's a way of looking at this where it's, it's because of that technicality, we fall between a crack. And, 99 out of 100 99 out of 100 non-conforming lots are non-conforming by virtue of being single and separate.
How far?
We're that one that's non-conforming by virtue of being a variance lot, that's all. So, but it still makes sense to apply a similar relief standard because that was the standard that the village set to not even require coming to the zone.
So we received a letter from 338, which we already discussed, which primarily about the parking there. Has there been any communication from 318, which is the property which would be most affected by the addition's proximity to their property?
I think somebody called my associate Beth, but just asked for copies of the plans. There's been I've heard nothing from
They've
them.
not submitted any letters.
I haven't heard from them.
Yes.
I'm here to speak to you, Michael.
Okay, so we'll give you that opportunity. So, thank you.
Right. I mean, the neighbors.
Because that would be the property most affected by this addition being exceeding the backyard setbacks to the study that it has.
The property that did submit the letter is the one behind them.
No, I understand.
Much bigger lot. I mean, that was the image that you had up on front of Neelay's thing.
They're affected by the driveway, but they're not affected by the mass of the addition, which is the other
That's
house
right.
in between.
That would have been
That's why I'm
nice.
asking about this property, which is the one most affected by the addition's proximity to that.
And I think the message from the people who did put the objecting letter is why can't you just comply with the code? I think I've explained that, why the code, when you try to apply an R120 standard to a 0.67 acre lot, it breaks down.
Okay, well, that's the reason for a zoning board of appeals.
That is the reason for the zoning.
Okay, it's because the code in and of itself may be fine for a village as a whole, but properties differ, context, wetlands, dunes, elevations, proximities to the property, configurations. And so that's exactly why we are considering something that doesn't fit in.
And part of why I talked about all the town line road, there are lots that are 0.2 acres, they're also subject to R120 standards.
And there again, and I don't intend to give you a hard time, but Town Line Road south of Daniels Lane is an entirely different situation from Town Line Road north.
I agree.
In terms of its entire concept, beach houses, size and shape of lots, and how they've been developed.
It's a mishmash, and that's the best I can put it, but even in the blocks that I'm talking
Yeah.
about, so the block between Daniels and Hedges, there's no one,
No, there is.
they develop over time.
But they're nothing like the lots south of Town Line Road, which were designed as beach cottages. And the configurations are entirely different, so it's a different neighborhood altogether. What it does have in common is the parking in the front. And the parking in the front has to do with the ability to put it in other locations, which.
What it also has in common is they both are R120, which kind of shows,
Yeah.
I don't want to say lack of thought, but you can only have so many zoning codes, right? So many zoning districts and
It wasn't a lack of thought, it was an intent of someone at the time that the code was drafted to only have the R120 and have no commercial zone whatsoever, notwithstanding 9 commercial properties with their pre-existing non-conforming. In any event, that's history.
so that's our argument regarding the rear lot line and the lot configuration. Do you want to hear from the neighbors and then if you have any more questions of me?
Yeah, if you're done,
I
and
think so.
Neely does, if you don't have any further comments, you'll have an opportunity to speak again after our neighbor from 318. So if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Thank you.
That's.
Hi.
So I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Susan Mycelis. I'm working as a documentary photographer for 5 decades. I'm the owner of 318 Town Line Road, which is the property precisely behind 328. So I'd like to comment obviously on some of the proposals from my neighbor. I have to, I'd like to also submit to you guys some of the points I'm gonna make. So just to give you some background, I've been coming to Wayne Skip since 1970. My late husband, Richard Rogers, spent all his childhood summers at the property in question, 328 Town Line Road. Essentially, that little farmhouse is where it all began, and the farmhouse progressively was expanded. The farmhouse is also believed to have been built in 1790 based on the steps that are in the interior, which I do have a photograph. I didn't include it with you because it's not to the point. And it obviously fits in the smaller scale of properties. This part, Town Line Road. So my husband and I inherited the house in 318 in 1986. For decades, we've watched Sagaponic evolve and retain at the same time a special character of its community. So although I do not believe that the proposed new structure matches the character of the community as I know it, my focus today is really on the request for extensive variances that directly impact my own property. So in the short week, as you'll see in the comments, it goes through the various points. I'm not going to do all of that on your time. In the short week, since the proposed plans were digitally sent to me by Elizabeth Baldwin on August 6th, which I requested, I wasn't sent to them by them, and I had no contact with the owner about any of the proposed plans. I've tried to educate myself as a layperson, frankly. I've learned a huge amount about Sagaponic zoning code. So I've listened to the Sagaponic ARB board hearing on April 27th, sought counsel to address a number of concerns, which is what we have, some of the advice I've been given. So I'm submitting that for the public record, which is a preliminary analysis, really raising the questions that are beyond my language ability, honestly, and the mathematics involved. So obviously the variances that are being requested, you've heard about the 5 off-street parking spaces, front yard setback, rear yard setback. I'm not going to really speak to that. I think for me, this legal analysis really does demonstrate that proposed variances are substantial and they're a direct, for me, contradiction with the legal standard. So the question is, with that handout, you'll see it's pretty detailed. Most concerning to me is the variance which applies to the principal structure in the rear yard with a setback of only 435 when the code requires 100 feet. This proposed structure will not only directly impact my quality of life, but it also involves the removal of century-old trees, which hasn't even been mentioned, on the property that serves as a buffer between our houses. So for me, the requested variance for the pergola and patio setback brings both structures unnecessarily close to my front door, literally. And in the rear yard build out will irrevocably alter the front yard of my property across the whole front of the property. So I see this as an oversized project, a scale that's far beyond what I certainly expected. As I said, I respect the right of new owners to design a new home. I expect it to meet the standards within the constraints and requirements of the property acquired. I think the scale of the requested variances is unreasonable. The proposal should be seen as self-created hardship. And I mean that quite seriously. The limitations of a 3/4 acre lot were known to the owner when he bought the property. So nothing was hidden. I appreciate the board's understanding of my concerns. I look forward to a resolution that will respect my rights as a neighborhood and a neighboring property owner. So I'm submitting those notes to you for the public record and discussion. I'm not technical. I'm just feeling the history evaporating around me. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else here who hasn't spoken, who would like to speak either in favor of or in opposition to the application? Yes, sir.
My name is Lawrence Hayes. I was the real estate agent. I worked with Compass. I was the listing agent for sale of 328 Town Line to the current buyer. I did not represent the buyer in this regard. So I'm speaking based to provide some history to the board in reviewing the project. Before we listed the property, I met with the village numerous times to talk about what the issue would be with regard to the property, the historic aspect of the house and the like, as well as to address some of the family's issues with respect to the desire to, if possible, to retain the structure. It was informed by the village that they leaned very hard on the desire and need for the building, the existing structure, to be retained for historic purposes and to keep the character of Saginaw. As the listing agent and fielding inquiry and interest by buyers of the property, I can honestly tell you that there were close to 40 some odd people that expressed interest and or made offers on the property. And there was only one who was willing to, after the discussion, and basically of all those other inquiries, all were desirous of tearing down what was there and not working within the framework of what the village was looking to do. And quite vehemently so, to the point where they would walk away from making a formal offer. The current buyer was the one individual who expressed an interest and a desire to retain the character, the nature, by preserving it and working to build off of that. I referred to the buyer, Millet, as an architect because of his history and experience of doing just this in Saginaw, with his firm. And so a lot of these issues were discussed before the purchase even went through, and it was an understanding on the part of the buyer of what we were dealing with that. And and then a couple points that were not clarified and have still not been clarified as of today is that the driveways to the north, both of them, are part of an easement that was granted in 1990 by the town of Southampton, which went into the whole issue of the subdivision of the property, both 328 and 318 subdivision, as well as the subdivision of the parcel behind that, which was done. But no one has dug up. My first question was asking if someone would dig up the legal records from the town of Southampton that underlies the easement of those driveways, because it would make the most sense to enter into both 318 as well as 328 from one of those driveways, rather than move the driveways all the way around, right? And but no one has dug up the original easement documentation that talks about what the usage of that property is. It's not owned by the property behind. It's still owned as, the easement is still owned by the owner, the original owner, and then would be passed through by deed to deed.
You're talking about the driveway that's labeled 338?
Yes, it's part of an easement from Muriel Rogers.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's a document in the town of Southampton somewhere that talks about what they're allowed, what the access and usage of that.
That driveway, you've probably heard, I'm focused on, I don't like these driveways.
Yeah.
I don't want to have a third one added.
Well, exactly.
You're saying that the 338, let's call it the 338 driveway, does not have the same ownership as the property that it leads to?
Yes. I mean, I'm not an attorney.
Don't point to me. I'm not researching.
I suggested that somebody research, because theoretically, if that easement says that the owner
other properties can have access
off it, then it doesn't matter what the property behind would solve a lot of problems that this board is talking about, right? As well as usage of property. So, I mean, that's something that I think everybody should look at, which may solve a lot of problems. The other clarification on that is that if you look at the right now, to the north, you'll have 3 driveways, right? But if you left the driveway on the south, you still have 3 driveways on the south.
I think you only would have 2.
No, because the property, no, because 308 also has their driveway next to it, so it goes 308, 318.
But my issue was,
Yeah,
and again, maybe this isn't even for this body, but those driveways, as I said, look like, you know, they're just awaiting paving to be turned into the Long Island Expressway,
yes.
and which I object.
That's without even the development of the.
Correct. So we're at risk of having a
Which is also right
Yeah.
at the beginning of Wainscott, Maine.
Exactly,
It's gonna be-
exactly. So this turns all this into an urban corner.
Right. Unless the village decides to do eminent domain and make it a street, right? But yeah, so that's my, that was my input on terms of that and the history of it. That the large majority of buyers who look to buy were looking to tear down the existing structure. This buyer wanted to.
So anyone buying the property was aware of its limitations
Yes.
and either would have to live with those limitations or not buy the
The
property.
limitation of retaining the
This
existing
buyer bought the
structure.
property, knowing of the limitations, and then wanted to double the size, which is a self-created hardship. They knew what the limitations were. I appreciate your comments. I think that there is no request for any increase in FAR, correct? Okay. And most of the development, a lot of the development is below grade. It's, basement floor, it's gonna have a den, lounge area, bedroom suite, sauna, gym, theater. There's quite a bit of development below grade, which is to count as FAR against you, it's fine. But there are areas there that presumably could be living areas. In addition, on the first floor, which does count and is above grade, I see there's a library study and there's a kid's den, and they're fairly substantial living areas, including family area, living room, dining room, kitchen, all within the addition. And there's a carve out for the courtyard, very lovely design architecturally. I like the concept of courtyard entries, but given the size and shape and configuration of the property, perhaps the massing of that addition so close to the property to the west could be managed to some extent. Now, I don't know to what extent the design can allow for adjustments within the interior that could diminish that size or its proximity. And maybe that's a discussion that could be had between the homeowner and the adjacent homeowner.
One can always try, but
I mean, in some cases that's been feasible and it's been very useful and it's been successful. I don't know whether due to the nature of this design, it's at all practical that there could be adjustments made that might, mitigate some of the concerns.
I can speak to a couple of things there. So the width of the addition is fairly narrow. As you can tell from the furniture, there's not much room around.
By width, you mean the east-west?
The east-west dimension. It's not trying to go
22 feet roughly.
Yeah, and which is right along. All the circulation, all the program happens in that 22 feet. Now, the courtyard, in some sense, to your point, Chairman, is a feature that helps the bedrooms, which are actually facing Downline Road. So the existing building houses all the bedrooms. That is really the only relief for somebody in those bedrooms not to have to stand out on Downline Road and get some open air and be able to kind of experience their bedroom with some, with some degree of, outdoor experience in the courtyard. So that's the kind of nature of how that courtyard, sort of.
Can I also, one of the comments I vaguely remember from the interview was the use of the courtyard to provide a more clear separation between the historic house and the new addition. That's all.
But I thought, maybe I misunderstood the term, but it doesn't matter. The north-south dimension of what we're calling the addition, it extends on both the north and the south. It extends beyond the
Condition
length
space.
of the existing house.
Yes,
Right?
yes.
And is that necessary? We talked about this before, your I don't know what you call it, this drawing doesn't show,
Yeah,
but this does.
yeah.
And it's clear that, that's what adds, that's what gives this whole project, in my mind, bulk. Is that adding to both the north and the south?
To that point.
Can that be
Well,
moved in?
the only things that are in these wings are actually outdoor spaces. They don't have
We're gonna show
any
you.
outdoor spaces other than those covered spaces. And in fact, one of the reasons.
Well, that's only true to the south.
Right there.
South is outdoor dining.
Yes, it's that space,
Yeah.
which to the street, the main thing you're gonna see is the roof,
Yeah,
right? So it looks like building, it doesn't look like,
but it's the
patio.
same height as the existing
I get
the
it,
structure.
but it extends further south.
Granted,
And then you have the same thing on the north.
correct.
Although you have walls.
No, there is a small 6-foot the opening area to the north as well. So this, as you can tell as well, is open. The northern flank of the building also is open.
Doesn't show that in.
Yeah, in the plans you'll see that. That's really the outdoor area that functions more or less like a pool cabana, because there's no room for a pool cabana there.
Oh, I see, you mean, that's what shows on this, that's,
Yes,
I'm
yeah,
looking at page I think it's page 14.
correct.
The
And
solid wooden portion of the extension shown there on the north end, is that the 1/2 bath? What are,
what's in there?
Are you talking about the bottom right, the low structure?
on
or-
the right-hand side on the extension, the northerly end of the extension has glass.
Yes,
On the west side,
yes. Yes,
it's not shown what's in that space on the floor plan.
it's a pool, it's a room that's related to the pool.
Okay,
So it services as the pool cabana. And this area here, which is
that's the half
wood-
bath.
That's the half bath and the entry closets.
Okay, so that's why that's enclosed.
Yes,
Yeah.
And then there is a 4-foot section which is open, that is what extends the roof further. So both ends, north and south, have open areas rather than enclosed.
Although on the north, it's
Yeah.
partly open and partly
Right,
closed.
yeah.
And it still has the roof regardless.
But that roof extension beyond the northerly facade of the addition is 4 feet.
Yes,
That's this. But you're talking about this piece, which extends
Yeah,
beyond.
here's where you see it.
Yeah.
You see it's here,
Yeah.
it's all
Yeah,
roof but open.
Yeah.
Here it's
so.
roof but open
Yeah.
and
So-
not all.
can I give you some background on just kind of size since we're discussing this? One of the desires my clients had was to actually have an enclosed garage. Because they said the garage that we have there, let's relocate it and have a garage. And finally, I had to tell them, you do not have space for a garage because all of the space is eaten up in your house. 600 square feet was way too much to give up because the spaces themselves are extremely tight. The existing structure is 1,800 square feet. The addition is probably 200 square feet more than that. No, it's 2,100 square feet, the addition. So it's not that big a structure. It's not like we're adding 3,000 square feet to an existing home. And again, there's no area variance.
Sorry,
Excuse me,
Virginia.
can you stop talking in the audience, please?
Excuse me,
Susan,
Justin.
sorry.
Can I just make a couple of, and I don't want to belabor the points Ms. Mizell has made. It's totally understandable why she's here and what the concerns are, but when you say, you know, just I expect you to meet standards, what I want to point out is her parcel does not meet R120 standards, period. Just as ours doesn't. And it was created by the exact same variance that created our parcel, also had a second set of variances that created hers. And in the same, you know, I read to you what the zoning board gave our client in terms of front yard setback, et cetera. Their parcel was approved in the exact same resolution at 28,876 square feet. It got a width variance to 15 feet because of the driveway. That didn't comply with the code. It got a front yard setback to 23.6 feet, virtually the same as ours for the principal building, and a rear yard setback to 62.4 feet. My point's only that this is why we're here. The R120 standards don't work for parcels like this. And the Southampton zoning board gave those variances to allow those two lots to be separated. We are meeting GFA, we are meeting total coverage, and we are meeting that 3.3 standard that I think is the right standard to apply for a parcel that is substandard, because that's the rule that the village came up with as a fair way to measure relief. So
There's no question in my mind that you're entitled to some relief based upon the size and configuration of the property. What we're discussing is the degree of relief and how it's configured on the property to minimize any adverse impact. Else.
yeah, and to be fair too, I get why we had to make a trade-off in one sense that I told you, what's the alternative? Go up. It's not something that, from a village standpoint, they want us to do.
You're assuming that you're entitled to.
That's true. No, I'm saying to get a variance, right, to get additional space.
Yeah.
The two options were to go up or to go back.
Oh, no, but there's a
Or to
third,
go away.
we think there's a third option, which is not to give you more space. We're not gonna get, we're probably gonna give you more space, may not be every inch you want. I mean, those aren't what you describe as the two options are not what the two options.
I'll say it this way, and not to argue with you, but the statute says, are there alternative ways to achieve the benefits sought by the applicant, right? The benefit sought by the applicant is the additional space, and I understand your position, doesn't mean the balancing works out. But the only alternatives to achieve that benefit sought by the applicant is what I said, you go up, you get wider, or you go back. And of those three options, the only one that's feasible from, I think, a village historic standpoint is to go back, which is the one person admittedly who's impacted by that is Mizell, and I understand that. So you want us to, what's your pleasure, Mr. Chairman?
Well, if there are no further comments today, and this is a lot to digest, and we just received this submission from Ms. Mizell today, and I think there are a lot of still unanswered questions, I would like to continue the hearing for us to have an opportunity to digest this and discuss it, and perhaps ask for further information. And as I've said a few moments ago, in some of these cases, it has been productive during that time period for the adjacent homeowners to have a little discussion and see whether any reasonable compromises can be made that don't do complete violence to your design and your desire, but would mitigate some of the adverse effects. So I would suggest that if you have the time and the ability and the willingness to do that, that would be helpful. And perhaps some mitigation can be presented at next month's meeting where we further consider and maybe have other questions about what's been presented to us.
And can I also ask that you research, and maybe this is, a fool's errand, but
I know what you're saying.
The driveway.
The driveway, you want to.
I wanna know about the 338 driveway.
I will research it.
Okay.
Might as well. I mean, I'm not, but I don't wanna say that
I'm not asking you to
It's-
fix anything,
No, no, no,
except
no.
find out what this
No,
is.
I just don't want those owners to freak out when if they see the transcript and say someone's challenging my rights, like I'm not
They
doing
won't
that.
even know.
But we will
Talk to them
research
later.
it and I'll report back.
Okay.
I happen to be a title lawyer, so I can do that for you and
Okay,
I'll tell you the exact answer,
okay, good.
either way.
And the other thing we didn't discuss, but should be considered, is there was some discussion about the taking down of some very old and attractive trees, which might be considered if there's a possibility of saving some of those, and also screening along the north side of the property to mitigate the effect of the driveways as well.
Well, that's why I was asking about this driveway, because if there's access from the 338 driveway, then that corner can be preserved. And you don't need to move the telephone pole and all this other stuff.
The plan shows they're removing the trees.
I think one of them was determined later that it could be safe, so we might have to
They're not
update.
hiding that.
I think we can update the plan.
Yeah, no, we're saying
because,
hi, we just don't want
We
to
can
go.
have an arborist take a look at it too.
We
What
do
do-
have someone else who
I
would
have
like.
to say something to.
I have a little question.
Wait one second.
My name is Susan Collins. I'm an interior designer by trade. My aunt is a neighbor at 308 Telmine Road. So I've been summering at her house for the past 50 years.
Flag lot
Susan
between the
Collins.
property.
Oh, Carol Gillen. And I love the idea of the driveway with the easement to the north, I guess, as a way to access your driveway. I will point out that if you were to move the driveway to the south, adjacent to Miss Meisel's and my aunt's, it's their house, my aunt's house is like very far forward on the property. Also, it's a very modest 1,200 square foot home. The new owner's driveway and all that commotion will be like in her house. It's like very noisy. So that's one point. And then also Ms. Meisel's like the removal of the trees, I think, at the backyard and maybe consolidating how far back you're adding should be addressed with the interior courtyard and relocating the entry in the center, because those trees provide a lot of privacy. I've stayed at her property into the way that the property was subdivided many years ago. So removing those trees is greatly impacting her property and the property.
Before you leave, I see it's faded out because only the subject property is bright, but what is the northerly structure on your aunt's property?
That is her house.
No, there's a house and there's a
There's
little
that.
something else.
Oh, it's a little garage. to the
Oh,
north.
that's just the
It's just
garage.
a garage.
Okay.
Okay.
All right,
Yeah, so it's her house and the garage, and then they have a nice sized backyard.
All right, since you're not making an application for a variance, you haven't granted us authority to go on the property, which we can do inspecting those properties for which variance is granted. But I'm assuming that you would have no objection if we wanted to walk the property to see its proximity that you discussed.
Oh, to walk the driveway.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
We're not gonna enter any house or.
Yeah, we just want, it'd be
Yeah,
nice.
no,
wanna
you
be
can
able
see,
to
they're like
see
little gravel
perspective.
driveways, Miss
Yeah.
Meisel's and my aunt's, there's like a little hedge in between.
The question is, can we walk up?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
You can stand and you'll see it.
Okay.
There's like a
I'd
beautiful
like to be able
historic
to
tree.
walk on your property to see proximity.
Of course.
Yeah, I agree with your point also, and I think the easement would be something to look into, to consolidate to the north, but moving it to the south will greatly impact Miss Meisel and my aunt more.
But it is, again, I assume, I don't know what the history of this house has been over the last couple of
Yeah.
years. But the driveway is on the south right now,
Yes.
so I don't know when the car last drove up it, but
I just, historically, yes, but the house was set forward, so now the house coming back and the driveway coming back, it's much grander than what was there for the past 100 years.
Okay.
Can I add just a piece of information to the question B? I mean, historically, and this issue of the north and south, and I completely understand Susan why she's saying that, because there was a major change. There used to be an easement that was shared between the two properties. It was one family. So a year ago, that changed.
between which part, 308 and 3?
Well, I tried to say it, I'm sorry, I'm not a writer, I'm not legal, and I can't.
Between,
I'm saying that the property at 318 and 328 shared a driveway for 100 years. There was no separation
Right
of the
here.
property
I see.
physically.
I see.
You see, so that when I actually,
so
I
this and this
requested,
shared this driveway,
Got it.
so there was one driveway.
now there's two.
I actually asked whether or not there could be an easement, because it was at quite a considerable expense that I had to create another driveway, which had only 15 feet, which is below code now.
Yeah.
It was extremely difficult. I had to maneuver and move massive plants in order to be able to have a turnaround.
Mhm.
So I actually proposed to the potential owner through my friend, the broker, that it would be convenient, it would be great if we had an easement or some kind of shared at that time in terms of the south driveway. Now, with the configuration, I think actually, I agree totally with Susan that it's much more advantageous to have an easement if that exists. Muriel Rogers was a crazy dame, she could have well done that. I mean, seriously, she was surrounded by potato fields for a long, long period of time. I grew up with potato fields all around behind that house. So I think she didn't anticipate what we're seeing today very well. And if there was an easement, I don't know whether or not 338 would be partial to that. But they potentially could be. And I think that would be added properly for you in terms of green space. I still hope you're gonna think about a pergola, which is basically that noise. Frankly, if people are outside and they're talking and there's no buffer with vegetation, I would hope you consider it. So whether or not you all agree with the variances and the distances and the, when you go on my property, you will see the dramatic change to having a hedge that's actually low, so it doesn't protect me from seeing this roof line. I will see the roof line wherever I am in my home, and that changes how it feels fundamentally. So maybe that's a consideration in your vegetation.
Absolutely.
And, you know, protection. I mean, I've been in many homes, East Hampton, you don't even know there are mansions behind those hedges. We all know. The Sagaponic side is the very, I would never call it mishmash, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
No, but I do feel this
That's
is the
totally
essence. You know, it's scale, it's the ambition of a home that should have been on 3 to 5 or 10 acres of land. And he has the means to do that. So it's very upsetting to me that a tiny little property that has a certain character along Town Line Road is not protected, you know, in the way in which it feels. It feels when you drive down, it feels like it's a progression to those crazy little bungalows, etc. And even those houses that have come in that are contemporary have hedges. They protect us from seeing the dramatic change.
This is the.
Just to clarify one thing,
Yes, please, yeah.
308, 318, that has a current easement on that? That
I'm sorry.
is a
No,
current
no,
easement
no,
on
there's,
it now?
no, we don't share, this is Carol
We
Gillen.
don't share.
We don't share a driveway. I meant 318 and 328, but we had the reason there was a technical division was because there were 2 kids. And when Muriel Rogers died, she said, who wants the front house, who wants the back house? There was no intention to sell the property at that time. So life changes. That's the history of why there was an easement, and in fact, where my driveway was just grass, and we parked on the grass, or we parked on the gravel. It was very comfortable. We shared a garage, etc., etc. So that's the sentimentality, but I'm trying to get to a rational relationship to the ambition of this new property owner. 8 bedrooms in a tiny little 3/4 acre, half underground, half over, an extended dramatic roof. That's what I'm talking about, the change of the feel of what has been there.
Unfortunately, this is a problem that we're constantly wrestling with, partly due to the enormous land values within Sagaponic.
Very aware.
People who buy the properties feel that they have to max out the square footage in order to make it work for them.
Yeah.
And perhaps you're right, perhaps they shouldn't be buying these properties with those grandiose ambitions about the property that they want to live in. We can't stop development or progress, and we shouldn't. And we're doing as good a job as we can to try to preserve the basic character of the village. And it's not a single character. You have the open farm fields where you don't want hedges. You want unobstructed view. And you have the small properties around the fringe, like Caroline Road, which are entirely different than the rustic and rural. And they need some protection and shielding if you develop it. But the size of the development is a pressure. When we wrote the code and limited the maximum size of a dwelling to 10,000 square feet, brokers went crazy saying you destroy the land values, and how can you expect people to be limited to that? Which is why we provided in the code that living areas below grade with clear story windows for natural light would not be obstructing or crowding the fields, and still would allow people, afford people, the ability to have ample living space on a property that costs what it does. That also went for allowing historic structures to be connected to new structures with tunnels, so that you wouldn't be having two dwellings on a property, but you'd be preserving the old. So the concept here is a fine concept of a new addition which accommodates normal household needs for year-round homes, which may have previously only been summer homes. And a lot of the effort went into putting a lot of that living space below grade, where it doesn't necessitate overcrowding the property. Nonetheless, due to the nature of the property and the proximity of these other properties, it is a bit problematic here in terms of the proximity of the massing of the new addition to the adjacent property and the driveways. And we'll look and see whether there is a way to configure it to maybe to mitigate that impact and still allow a reasonable development of the property. The existing property is clearly not designed for or suitable for a modern family usage. So we appreciate that and we'll give it further consideration.
Yes, it's about setting precedent. Because
Well,
we see
that's-
all these lots, is that where we're going?
Yes,
Is that what?
and that's a discussion we've had on
I'm
the
sure,
board here
I'm
many
sure.
times about avoiding setting precedents with creeping development that would ultimately undercut the code. We try, when we do grant variances, to limit their applicability due to unique circumstances. But clearly, people seem to be having an expectation that we will be granting variances that perhaps we shouldn't be. So, any further comment on that?
Well, thank you for your consideration. I know that it's your territory, so thank you for.
Thank you.
Can I say one thing just because square footage came up, please? I just wanted to identify that all square footage is not meaningful. One of the reasons that the existing home is being utilized for domestic sleeping bedroom purposes, because the average height in those spaces at the eave points is 6 feet 8 inches. We simply can't have any gathering function there. That's why they're all bedrooms. And therefore, the other portion of the home, the new portion of the home, which is where people will gather throughout the day, friends, family, everybody. The existing home is literally for sleeping and eating. Just wanted to underscore that.
Okay.
So I'll make it easy for you and say, can we hold this over for all purposes until the next meeting?
Yeah,
How's that? I think we all have questions
I think that's our intent.
And I'll say on the record, we're happy to talk to Ms. Meiselas about anything that we can try to do, including the very careful review of the screening between our house and the property. And we're happy to have that conversation. Okay.
Okay, then I will entertain a motion to continue this hearing to the September 11th zoning board meeting for all purposes, including submissions of materials and further testimony.
I make a motion.
Second? Aye. All in favor? Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Very much. I guess there being no further business, I will also entertain a motion to adjourn. I'll make that. Second. All in favor?
Apologies for not providing this earlier. I had no idea what the protocol was. Honestly,
Don't worry about it.
I'm sorry.
It worked
I
out
hope
fine.
it's council that gave me unfortunately. So waiting on. Who told me research? So, you know.
I hear professional submission.
Yes, well, but what